So the next question that I asked was, were leaders exist in today's society? 63% of my pollees actually said that they felt that leaders were non-existent in today's society. A lot of that, as I dug into it, it comes from the fact that people aren't having the time to actually deal with our youth. The talent is being wasted, and there aren't programs anymore like there used to be to where kids could get involved in different things in the community. It's basically an idle mind at waste. The last question that I posed to the focus group was about the military. 91% said that the military was once the best producers of leaders. I can actually speak on that topic, seeing as I'm a veteran myself of 8 years. I went in at 18. From there, I was enlisted. After 5 years of being enlisted, I became an officer. So I actually went through 4 different programs that the military had to offer. I had their basic training, which introduced me to the culture. I had the advanced individual training, which actually honed the skills. At the time, I was going to be a paralegal. And then I went on to WLC, which is the Warrior Leader course, which actually dives right into leadership into the military, where I actually learned the 3 things that it takes to be a leader. To be able to give purpose, direction, and motivation. After doing that as enlisted, I went on to go into the officer ranks. I actually had to go through the basic officer course, which was OCS. After going through that course, I went through bowling. So I got a real good facet of what the military was trying to offer the leaders that they produce. But now, I guess you can actually say that they were once the best producers of leaders, because in today's society, companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook, they're actually diving deep into what it takes to be a leader, because they're trying to find their leaders for tomorrow, because they see them as being non-existent. Leaders account for just roughly 13% of the world population. That means that out of the billions of people that are on Earth, only 13% are actually capable leaders, which is actually what you want, because leaders are not something that you can throw a rock and find around every corner. Leaders have to have a special it factor that some can be taught, some are born with, but either way, they have to be able to establish themselves as leaders. Out of that 13%, only half of them are actually in today's workforce. So you went from there only being 13% of the world's population to only basically 6.5% actually being leaders in today's workforce. And why is that, you say? It goes back to the very things that the poll took away. Lack of opportunity. You have a lot of kids that are in poverty right here in the United States that don't get the opportunity. Lack of guidance. I don't care if you got the money or if you don't have the opportunity, whatever it is, if you don't have the right type of guidance, someone that has great potential to be a leader could be lost. And the last thing is the lack of motivation. You can be the smartest, most intelligent person, but if you don't have that self-motivation and that get up and go about yourself, you won't go far as a leader. So, what is TLA aiming to find is a way to be able to cultivate these gems that we have. And when I say gems, I'm talking about the babies, our youth leaders. It's said that we learn the most within the first 5 years of life. So that's where, like I said, TLA has a range from newborns all the way up to 18 that they're trying to grasp. After the first 5 years of life, we spend the next 7 years developing those skills. So as we've learned things and we've absorbed everything like we were a sponge for the first 5 years, now we're trying to start actually applying some of that. And it's at the infancy stage within those first 7 years. You know, you're going through puberty and changes and things like that. But the leadership attributes are actually there, developing, if someone can take the time and see them. That's when a lot of kids get into sports and different things of that nature, to where they start to see that leader piece that they actually have, just a small bit. Then the last part, and I think this is where it gets lost, where we think we can grab our youth and mold them, is the teenage years. These years are actually spent identifying with who we are. So we've already went through 5 years of what we learned. We've honed those skills. And now we're at the teenage phase to where we're trying to identify with ourselves, see what we want to do in life. But usually by the time we're 12, whatever attributes are in us as far as being leaders, they were already learned. So now at that stage is when we have to really start cultivating and developing that. And at TLA, we'll take those years, starting from the first 5, the next 7, all the way up until the time that they're 18, and that's where we'll get the leaders of tomorrow's world. So again, like I said, age range for attendance, newborn to 18, age for enrollment, which is very important, newborn to 5 years old. And the reason why we do that, remember what I said about the teenage years and trying to grab them? This program doesn't aim to do that. We want to get them right after they've actually learned a lot of stuff, while they're in that time of being a sponge, so we can actually mold them and guide them in a direction and hopefully set forth that motivation we talked about earlier. Candidates will undergo 3 tests. It'll be social skills, a cognitive skills test, and then a physical skills test. That right there, there's 3 different types of leaders that you have. You have that social leader, that one that can go into a room and can captivate an audience. You want to be able to grab that. You have that cognitive leader